Welcome, everybody. Feel free to turn on your cameras. Feel free to post in the chat where you're logging in from. We'd love to see where you're from.
Yeah. So let's just okay, because I'm as confused as you are. So let's just go through your thought process on how you would do this if you're about.
Who has the absolute worst weather? Or wait, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jade.
I was gonna say, who has the worst weather right now, you think?
Do we have anyone from Texas? It's probably them.
I mean, I was gonna say me, but like,
Allie.
it's funny that I'm in San Antonio, Texas, so South Texas, in fact. It's actually, we're in the middle of a thunderstorm right now. So normally, I mean, it was like literally 103 yesterday, and today it is pouring rain, thunderstorm. So
did it at least cool off a little bit?
Oh yes. Oh yes. It was beautiful before it started raining. So I got to enjoy a little bit of outside time, which is different than our general 103 degrees that we've been experiencing all week. So
See you in August. I won't be happy, but I'll see you in August. Yeah, it's 75 and sunny here.
I would have won yesterday. Yesterday it was like storming and pouring rain and 75 degrees, which I guess wasn't that bad. But then I got to walk home in it, so that was the best part.
Okay, Heather, do you think we should get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, great. Well, I can start. So let me introduce myself. I'm Wesley West. I'm the head of admissions at App Academy. I've worked at App Academy for over 3 years. I work with all of the admissions specialists at App Academy. So if you're a prospective student, you've probably worked with some of my staff. And I am going to host tonight, and I'm going to go through and have the panelists introduce themselves. So they're going to introduce themselves with their pronouns, their cohort. I think all of the panelists are graduates, their current roles, and if they want to share a little bit about what they did before App Academy, that would be awesome. I'm going to get started with Allie.
So glad you're starting with me. I'm actually the one person on this panel who is not an alum. I, however, am very happy to say that I am part of the staff at App Academy as one of the career coaches on the placements team. I feel like I've been following App Academy since my good friend Mark, who will introduce himself, went to the program. So I've been a fan for a long time. Prior to coming on staff as a career coach, I spent many years as a teacher and years before that as an actor. So that is a little bit about me.
Great, thanks, Allie. Jared, you're up next.
Yeah, okay, so my pronouns are he, him, his. And then just what I did before App Academy?
Yeah, tell it, which cohort did you graduate from?
Okay, I was October 2019, because we graduated like the February of COVID. So I was right at the edge of that fun year. And then before App Academy, like right out of college, I was an elementary school teacher. And then I left that and I hopped around a bunch of stuff while I was living in SF. And then my last job before enrolling in the boot camp was being the office manager for App Academy. So I did have like a secret inside look into it before I joined. And that's me.
Great, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining. So next up is Mark.
Find the unmute. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Rodriguez. I am the technical manager for our placements team. So I oversee all the technical career coaches, software engineers who are going to be helping you if you come to App Academy, help you find jobs, prepare for technical interviews, technical interviews, technical projects, and just kind of work on all of the cool things you're going to be building after graduating on until when you find a job. Prior to App Academy, I did a couple of things too. I'm a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, a philosophy major, very hireable, and somehow ended up working in clinical research at Columbia University, which is why I'm here in New York City. I did that for many, many years, dabbled in R and Python for anyone who's familiar with those. R is not great, but Python is nice, and eventually decided to become a full stack software engineer. So I left Columbia and signed up for App Academy with Anna Pascal, who is in the room, but not on the panel, down below. Hi, Anna. And that was back at the very beginning of 2019. Moved to San Francisco, met Jared and Wesley and everybody else here pretty much. And then back to New York City, where I currently live and work. So yeah, it's a little about me.
Thank you, Mark. Whit, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Whit Minson. My pronouns are they, she, preferable on the they, but she is fine. My cohort was October 21, so just a few months ago now, so not too long. The current role is an online assistant instructor in Mod 7. So I get to see Allie and Mark quite often, which is nice. Before this, I had gone to college in Tennessee, in Middle Tennessee, and gotten a degree in fine arts. I'm a printmaker and an artist, and I did graphic design and especially like in museum panels and working on like research panels for graduates. I like the educational stuff. I've had stuff shown in Ireland and in the US. So pretty cool. After COVID, things kind of got crazy and ended up moving from the South to Oregon. And I was just kind of working warehouse jobs. I'm a printmaker also, so I work with my hands a lot. So that was like fine work. And decided I needed to have a change. My dad is a programmer, and I knew I would be really good at this stuff because I worked with computers with graphic design. So I searched and found App Academy. And so that's how I ended up where I am here. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Whit. Yura, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yura. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I was in the September 2021 cohort, so also a fairly recent graduate. I was with in a couple of modules. So I would, yeah. Prior to App Academy, I was an associate instructor at Indiana University, where I was also working on my PhD. I think like a lot of people, COVID happened, and I realized that academia was not sustainable with, funding freezes, budget cuts, things like that. So I decided to master out and really think about what I wanted to do. I was associate lecturer professor of informatics, which I like to describe as like computer science without the coding bits. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can translate that. And I remembered that I had taken a couple of intro to Python courses way back in my undergraduate, like 10 years ago. And I remember that I really enjoyed it. So I did App Academy. Here I am. I'm currently waiting on my work authorization to begin my new job, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, I'm just taking the time off, learning new languages.
Great, thanks for being here. So those are our panelists for this evening, and I want to just give you some tips and some ground rules for tonight. So feel free to turn on your cameras. We love seeing you, so don't be shy. Feel free to turn them on. And use the chat. I had several of you posting where you're from. Feel free to post questions in the chat throughout our conversation. We have some prepared questions that we'll answer, but that might trigger you to ask some other questions, and we'll make sure and try to get to those questions for sure at the end in the last 10 minutes, and maybe even as we're kind of going through. So feel free to use the chat. As you want throughout the presentation too, if you need to. I don't know, Heather, do we have the hand raising feature or no, they can just use the chat? Or maybe the panelists
Oh,
are supposed
hand
to use the
raising
hand raising.
feature. Yes, yeah, panelists.
Got it. Okay. I will also try to direct some questions to specific panelists if I know something about you, but panelists, feel free to jump in if you have things to say. Okay, so we are going to get started. So first question is that, you know, a lot of people have this kind of idea that when you start coding, that you have to start coding really early to become a software developer. You've all kind of shared that that maybe wasn't the case for you. But maybe what we'd like to hear from a few of you is just, how did you go about kind of discovering coding? I think I'm gonna start with, I'm gonna go to Jared.
Sure. So the first time I saw coding was in high school. We had like a comp sci AP class, which, oh God, you know, that was like 15 years ago. No one calculate my age from that. But that was like Java. And so that was like my first time seeing code, but in like typical high school student fashion, I didn't do much. Like, I don't think I did a single homework assignment in that class. Yeah, I got like a C. I barely passed that class. Like, I think in like a week, I crammed all of my coding knowledge into a single week of studying. And so I came out like being able to pass an AP test, but that wasn't really me doing coding. In college, I thought for a second I'd be a comp sci major. So I took like 2 classes in C++. They were very intro. And then I discovered I hated science and physics and all that stuff. So I switched to communication because I didn't want to take any more science. And so I didn't really touch coding again for a while. I went to school, I got a degree in comm and a minor in philosophy. And then after that, I graduated, worked for a research lab. After that, decided I wanted to work with kids, and so went into teaching, got my master's in education and taught. And it was while I was teaching, during the summer, I started running tech summer camps because I discovered I hated teaching. I hated being in the classroom, but I loved working with kids outside of the classroom. That's what I'd like originally gotten interested in working with kids with. And so at the tech summer camp, like kids were coming in and learning how to code, build robots, make games. And I think that's when I like rediscovered how like my interest in coding. It was like the kids were like so excited to build things. I was having a lot of fun, like with what little knowledge I had, like helping the kids like get better and stuff. And so yeah, I did that for like 3 summers. I ran camps. That's still the best job I've ever had. Like, I was learning coding and also like teaching and stuff. And then eventually, yeah, I started working for App Academy. I was kind of interested in coding boot camps, and so when I saw like a job for a coding boot camp, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I can go see what it's really like without enrolling. And honestly, what sold me on App Academy was like the instructors like were so incredible. Like, they all cared so much about their students, to the point where like me as a former teacher, I was like, y'all need to calm down. You're gonna burn out. But yeah, that was kind of like my coding journey / how I enrolled in the bootcamp.
Thanks, Jared. Other panelists want to just talk about how they discovered coding. I know, Whit, you mentioned family, and do you want to like go deeper into that?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, so my dad has been a programmer like longer than I've been alive. Except I didn't know anything about it at all. Like I could see him typing on it and it's like, oh yeah, that looks like you're doing the coding. Sure. He never talked about it. I never asked. He could set up great gaming computers, which was like, ooh, thank you. I didn't really have any interest in it except for when I was a kid, having Neopets. That was my first introduction into anything coding. And that was definitely to like the little profile that you could do in HTML. And that was pretty magical because it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that you could like change things on the computer. Like, it's not all set in stone. Like, and I'm not an old person just like making it like I made it myself. So that was RIP the Neopets. No, they never die. They never die. They're still there, which is kind of horrifying actually in itself. Let's drop that subject. But after that, I didn't touch coding at all, and I'm almost 30. Before I started App Academy, I had no clue how to do anything with coding, which I think was kind of a struggle at the beginning, was that it was all new and I have to wrap my head around these concepts that it's like, I think what led to it being difficult and fun is that it's like a puzzle and also like literally a language. And I think that that really struck a chord with me because I do love language learning and having that puzzle to figure out. It's like, oh, these are just the rules. You just follow the rules and you can make things happen. I can make a sentence. Like, look, there's a tiny little function right there. So I think that's super, ooh, serotonin, like that's like pushes all those little buttons perfectly. It's great. So yeah, you don't need to know, like, I think just the things that interest you can easily go into your love of doing coding. And I have a lot of artistic things that go into it. I love creating, and I also love helping, which is also why I'm a teacher right now. But those things are all playing into it, thinking about like, ooh, there's a user out there that I can make this task way better. I can solve this problem for them. And that's exciting. So that's something that really drives me and got me into coding.
Thank you. Yura, I'd love to hear how you've discovered coding.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that in my undergraduate program like 10-ish years ago, I took an introduction to Python class, and that was over the summer. So it was sort of like a summer intensive as well, kind of like App Academy is a coding intensive. I remembered I really enjoyed it, and then I kind of drifted away from coding for a really long time. I went into academic research, and I was basically doing qualitative analysis of data instead of like coding. So, and I think a lot of people look at those two things and think they're very different. You know, you're talking about, maybe you are talking about technology, but you're talking about it in the context of how it intersects with society and culture, and then doing qualitative analysis. But I like to have thought about it in sort of like two different sides of the same coin. You know, you're still applying the same sort of critical thinking skills. You're looking for patterns where they emerge, and then you identify those patterns and do something with it, whether it's, you know, writing a piece of code or doing like analysis on it. So I think it was kind of a natural drift back into coding. But no, I didn't really start coding until that introduction to Python, stepped away for 10 years and then came back and did App Academy. And I think as long as you have the ability to analytically look at things and discern patterns and understand the patterns, it doesn't really matter if you started coding when you were like 5. I think we all have the ability to learn how to do it.
Great, thank you. So Mark and Allie, I'm going to twist the question a little bit for both of you. So, you know, coming from what some people may have never even like looked at code at this point, do you have a favorite website or a recommendation? What should they Google? What should people check out to kind of start to get familiar with what it is coding or what to do? Either one of you can go. Mark, you're on mute.
You're muted, Mark.
I'm supposed to be able to, there we go. I'm supposed to be able to hold the space bar to unmute myself, and I wasn't clicked on the right thing. So there you go. No, I am a huge fan of YouTube. I watch a ton of YouTube videos, and I think Fireship.io is probably my favorite YouTube channel to follow. They do a great series called just kind of like Code in 100 Seconds or Less, and they are bite-sized little bits of tons of different programming languages, explanations on frameworks and libraries and all these other cool things, and they're very short. And then, of course, you can kind of dig deeper in with some of their material or their content. But Fireship's a great creator, really well respected in especially in the JavaScript community, but you know, all over. And so that's a nice little resource if you want to learn something very quickly. Yeah. And again, it's just Fireship.io. Yeah. Favorite one.
I was surprised Mark did not say App Academy Open, but I'll give a little tag for App Academy Open. As I said, I'm probably the only person who hasn't gone through the program. That being said, yeah, I definitely, in like every time Mark tells me like you should learn to do this stuff, I'll just like do a couple of things on Academy, and I'm like, okay. I would say other resources. I follow a lot of like I guess like influencers in the space. So I will say that two of my favorites also has YouTube channels, but there's a community called #100devs, and that is by a gentleman named Leon Noel. And I really like the way he approaches things. And then not so much for learning. He doesn't necessarily do the like learning to code things, but he does have a lot of resources for early developers, is Alicia Novin. And so I'll put his blog there as well. But he just has such excellent advice about becoming an early career, especially transitioning into development spaces. So those are my two favorite resources.
Thank you. So kind of shifting gears for the graduates, and one of the things that I think students are thinking about, they want to hear about your experience, and what prospective students are also kind of already knowing is that App Academy is a super intense program. And so I know that some of you did the in-person experience and some of you did the full-time online experience, both very full-time and immersive. We also have a part-time program, but would love to hear just about your experience in the course, and maybe touch on the level of intensity and kind of how you handled that. I'll turn it to maybe Whit first.
Oh no, let me think. Okay, so this was a very difficult process to get through this. I am definitely kind of on the side of things that I really like school. So I'm kind of a little bit of a weirdo there. I really like studying. I love doing all that stuff. I love making notes and making them look pretty, and like makes studying much more easier for me. However, what I wasn't expecting to be good at was the interacting with other cohort mates, and that aspect of pairing up and coding that way. I was really, really not looking forward to that. Just struggles with connecting with other people. I don't think I have a problem on outwardly doing that. However, on the inside, it stresses me out really bad. So I was not expecting that to be as an amazing experience as it was. And I'm super glad that I put aside my fears and my like apprehension of like, is this really necessary? Is this really gonna help? Because while I have imposter syndrome, I also think I'm pretty smart, which is a weird combo that you have to fight against yourself. But it really was amazing to see, to really dive into and like allow that to be a thing. I think some people can fight against it, and that is really doing like a disservice to yourself. And that I think not fighting against it actually makes you get more out of it and be like, okay, let's go all in, and I'm going to do what I can to learn from the person that I'm seeing coding, what is their thought process, but also helping me understand my own code and how I think by explaining it to someone else. And those were some of the most valuable things. And I think also leaning on other people in the cohort to study after hours, and that was really impactful for me too. Again, kind of a shock to me in that I usually like to study alone and do things like dive into it. But having those people to just sit there, and we might even talk for a while and maybe bring up like, hey, did you like get this part? Like, hey, I'm having trouble with this. We can all stop, we all look at it, but then we can go back and be working on it. And that was just like super awesome that I wasn't expecting. I have no idea where that question teetered off to, but hopefully that answers some of it.
Thank you. It does. Jared, you want to talk about the in-person San Francisco experience?
Yeah. I would agree in that I am a school person. I always loved being in school. Like part of me has always just thought like, is there a way to like be like a classroom auditor and then you just go to school all the time and get paid for it? But anyways, yeah. So I would say for me, I wouldn't call it a hard experience. I would call it like a hard working experience, right? So like I went in and I knew like I had just like decided like, okay, so for 16 weeks, I'm just like, this is my entire life. And so I would go in every day. I would, get there at like between like 7 and 8, and I would just be at school until 6 when class ended, right? You get a 1 hour break for lunch, 20-minute break for snacks. So that was my whole day. Go home, eat some food, do homework as much as I can until it's time to go to sleep. That was my life every Monday through Friday. Friday night I took off and I would hang out with friends. Saturday and Sunday, also studying at least 4 or 5 hours every day. So yeah, that was my life. And it was a lot, but it was doable because I just like I knew that's what it was. And then, I had to be like, okay, I'm not going to party or things like that because if you get a hangover, you can't wake up and study the next day. So beyond that, though, it was a really good experience. App Academy has really figured out their program. So it was like the instructors told me exactly what to study. They would be like, hey, you have a test tomorrow. Here's the study guide. Here's how long the study guide should take you. Like I remember one of our biggest tests. I don't know if it's still, I think it was number 4. I don't know if it's still a big one. They were like, you need to do this like at least 8, you need to do this question 8 times before you're ready for the test. And so I did it 8 times and it was a lot of work. It was challenging, but I did it 8 times and that was definitely enough. So that was really great. In addition, I'm in a second, I made wonderful friends during this. I still have a group of friends and we all still talk to each other since we graduated. Working with people is definitely my favorite part of the program. Like going to the lectures in the morning, that was hard. I don't do well in lectures. I need to talk a lot to understand things. The afternoon, when you got to work with someone, that was my favorite. I like talking, especially when you got to work with your friends. So it was like, oh man, it's just like you're with your friend, you're working together, you're problem solving. You feel good because you're doing well. And then at the end, when we got to work on our own projects, it's super fun because finally you've been given all these different skills and finally you're unleashed to build your own thing. And honestly, now that I've been in the industry for 2 years, the thing I built with App Academy, I'm like, oh, I've probably put more time and effort into that than a lot of what I do for work. And so it's really cool just having this chance to put your all and build something from scratch and make all those decisions while having enough support, both peer support and expert support to help you feel confident and comfortable. And I just really sound like an App Academy ad right now, but I had a really good experience. It's very true. And so yeah, it was a lot of work, but I think as long as you're ready to just for the next 16 to 50 weeks, however long it takes you to job search, that's your life. You're gonna have a good time. Yeah, that's it.
Mark, something to add from the New York perspective?
Oh gosh, from the New York perspective, well, it was certainly the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Certainly the most challenging. It is a boot camp. There are no questions about that. So you're going to get out of it as much as you put in, and it is going to be a lot of work. But that being said, coming into the office every day, seeing my friends, basically what everyone has stated at this point with Jared, that was motivating for me. I say this to every panel I'm on, every group that I meet. I failed my very first assessment at App Academy, and back in the day, if you failed an assessment and you failed one more, that was it. It's over. And I had left my job, and there was a lot riding on this, so there was a lot of pressure there. But friends really got me through. My instructors, the instructors, the staff were very, very, very helpful, and motivating to kind of keep my head down and continue working and pressing on and studying as hard as possible. And I would not say that it was smooth sailing or that it was a perfect upward trajectory after that initial assessment, but it certainly rescoped what App Academy was and what this experience is, and the amount of work that it does take to start a brand new career from scratch, right? So I don't know if the question is that, so much advice as it is a perspective or both, but do your due diligence before coming here. Understand what you're getting yourself into and the amount of work that it will take. But be proud of yourself when you're moving through the program, and lean on your friends for help. And at the end of the day, it's the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. And I cannot imagine my life having not gone through this process, and especially here at App Academy, where I still am because I feel at home. Yeah.
Something to add, Whit?
Yes, that made me think of that, why this was also really difficult for me, just like Mark, is that I was not used to not getting things. And that was something that really hit me in the beginning of not being introduced to these concepts, and it kind of breaking my brain a little bit. And that was hard, just to be like, oh, this is an uncomfortable place to sit in that I don't understand this, and I have to really like grind and work and ask people how they're viewing it and find other resources, like how can I visualize this better. And I will say that the staff and the teachers and the TAs were super amazing on all having these unique perspectives on how they view a certain concept. And eventually I found one that would click, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like finally, like it clicks and it's like working together, which is that aha moment, which is awesome. So we'll say it is okay to be in that uncomfortable spot, even though it is uncomfortable and it sucks, but it is really satisfying to get past that and to really push yourself.
Great. Yura, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, all the time at your computer, full-time online. Tell us, what's that like? What was that experience?
So I might have a sort of atypical approach to this, because coming from this space where I would be at work from 8 to 8. I was teaching 30 hours a week at a university while working on my PhD. So I actually knew coming into App Academy was going to be easier in certain ways. That's not to say there weren't times where it was really difficult. It was still, exercising a part of my brain that I hadn't been exercising for a really long time. I think kind of like what Whit said earlier, reaching out to your cohort mates, talking to the instructors, that was really helpful. I was very lucky to be placed in a cohort where we were apparently unusually close and helpful to one another. So that was really nice. We had like this Discord channel where everyone was chatting. Then we had like sub channels for like specific groups. So like there were some like women and NB groups, support groups and things like that. So that was really helpful. Whit was in it with me. It was awesome. I was also very lucky that I think the first week I kind of like just threw out a question there. It's like, does anybody want a study group? And that kind of like grew into this group of Discord pals where we're still chatting. Like most of us have moved on to jobs, but we're still chatting, and it's been really nice to have that support. But I think also kind of like what Jared said, you have to go into this with the mindset that it is a full-time job, basically. And as long as you go in thinking that, this is a job, and it's going to suck at times, but you just got to get through it, you're going to be fine.
Thank you. So Allie, how is that student experience going to change when they get to the job search?
It's going to change pretty drastically, because I'm hearing this and I'm just like, where did that mentality go the second y'all graduate? I will say that the best, most successful job seekers are going to enter the job search in the same way that you approached the boot camp. You're going to treat it like a full-time job. You're going to treat finding a job as your job. You're going to be scheduling. The biggest difference, and I think kind of to give the insight on the other side of the curriculum, is though you have lots of support, it's also now kind of it's your game. So once you graduate, we have some guidance about how you should be spending your time, but it isn't going to be the same like you are in the classroom, whether that be virtual or in person, from 8 to 5 every day. It is definitely your schedule to make, because everybody has different workflows, everybody has different kind of ways that they work better than others. And the job search doesn't have necessarily a clearly defined, this is what works for every single person in the job search. That being said, if I can encourage those, because I see some people that are still in the curriculum, if I can encourage you all to keep that mentality as you are heading towards Mod 7, Career Quest, and then into the job search beyond, maintain that motivation, maintain that like work ethic. I know it can be so much of a grind, especially when you're grinding so hard to get through the curriculum. There's sprint. It's a new way of working. It's a new approach. I'm not saying, but like take a breath, and then you got to keep kind of at it. So I will say that's kind of how things change. The ones who really treat the job search like a job will do the best. And it's easy to get off track when you don't have those same systems of accountability that exist. But hopefully we on the placements team can help with that. So Mark should take it now because I know he has stuff to add there.
Oh boy, do I. No, no, everything Alex said is completely correct, right? Like, it is going to be, if you keep the mentality, you keep the momentum, you're going to be just fine. I do think that one thing that's a positive change once you graduate, I think a lot of people appreciate, is that you move from being kind of on the very rigid academic schedule. Any of you all may have gone to college, kind of understand what that might have been like, where you just kind of have to do certain things every day. And you have kind of the guide rails of semesters, and it's all very laid out for you. And you just show up where you need to show up and you're done, right? In the job search, once you've graduated, those guardrails kind of come off. So while yes, you do have to, maintain that dedication, you're able to kind of pick and choose which workshops of ours you would like to attend, when you want to go to things like office hours, when do you want to participate in hackathons, when do you want to, try to meet up with an engineer at a company and over coffee and, learn more about their company, but also about, life in the industry. You have a lot of options. And so luckily you have career coaches like Allie, like the technical career coaches as well, who are going to be able to guide you through and help you kind of craft your own journey through the job search to A, maintain that momentum, but B, to have fun with it. Because at that point, you get to choose your path to your future career. You've gotten the education and now it's about getting the job. And so I think that's a very nice, interesting path. Just because I'm on it and it's in the chat, workshops that we offer vary greatly, between technical office hours for like debugging help and support on projects to behavioral workshops. Allie has hosted historically a kind of a personality and presence type of workshop where it's just like, how do you actually get out there and introduce yourself as an engineer to strangers? Because networking is going to be so important. We have lectures on networking, workshops on networking, application workshops. You can jump in and just, if you're struggling to get those first couple of applications out because you feel like you're not ready, just apply and your peers will help you and your coaches will guide you through that process. So there are tons and tons of workshops available. And we're going to help you. We're going to guide you through that process. You will not be alone.
Thank you. So we're going to switch gears. I think Whit mentioned imposter syndrome, and I do love to talk about imposter syndrome. And is there somebody who could give us a little definition? And it is something I think everybody faces. We see it in the admissions process. We see it throughout the program. Anybody want to raise their hand and give us a little bit on imposter syndrome? Mark?
I can do it because we've been talking about this a lot. So imposter syndrome is simple. It is the concept of feeling like you are the fake one in the room. Everyone else is a software engineer, you're not. Everyone else who maybe has done the same things that you have, did them in a way that makes them more of a developer than you. So if you built a full stack web application here at App Academy on your own with some guidance from instructors, and it works and it looks good and it's polished, and so did your peers, imposter syndrome will say, okay, well, maybe I did that, but I'm still not ready to start applying for jobs because I have so much more to learn, right? And that affects everyone. It affects everyone in the industry. And the problem with imposter syndrome is that the bar will always move. So once you get to a place where you're feeling like, okay, that thing that I said that I was never going to be able to accomplish, I accomplished it. However, I'm still not good at this yet because I found out that someone else can do this thing. Or I just heard a new technical term that I've never heard before, or maybe my cohort mate mentioned something that I don't fully understand. That means I'm still not there yet. And that bar, that imposter syndrome bar, is going to move forever, and you will never pass it. You will never be in your own mind good enough if you maintain that imposter mentality, right? Because we can always find something that we're not that great at. There's lots of stuff about software development that I don't know, but that's because this is a massive, wide, wonderful world of interesting people doing clever things in various different directions, and it's impossible to know everything. In fact, we don't. It's the joke that software developers are paid a lot of money to Google things because we're good at research and we don't need to keep everything in our brains, right? This is a collaborative industry, and so you're going to run into people that can do things that you have never seen before, that are going to introduce topics to you that you've never seen before. But what we're going to help you do, especially in the job search, and we're going to mention this over and over and over again, I'm sure Whit can express this as well at App Academy, in the instructional phase as you're a student, we're going to remind you that you are doing the things that make one a software developer, right? And you cannot continue, even though you're going to try, and even though you probably will at some point, move the bar, right? Move the finish line every time you're successful. And that's something that a ton of people do. And I'll leave with my favorite story. My favorite story is about Dan Abramoff, who is on the core team of React. He is one of the primary developers of Redux. You're going to learn about these two things. You may not know anything about them, but you'll learn about them in the curriculum. These people work for Meta. They work at Facebook, and they developed this framework that is now used all over the world. It is an extremely popular framework, a great technology, and it took a lot of skill to develop. Now, during React conference back in 2018, Dan is sitting up there in front of, or standing up there on stage for a keynote speech, and he's explaining a new technology. And as he's coding live in front of an entire audience, the code that he's writing breaks, and he has no idea why. The thing that he's trying to do does not work. And so people from the audience, who are made up of people like you, people like me, right? Just people who are going to gain wisdom from this person, are shouting from the audience, "You forgot to do this," or "You didn't do that." And he's like, "Oh man," going back and fixing it. And then eventually it works. And this is somebody who is pretty much at the peak of our field, right? At the top of the game, and still was running into little issues here and there and little bugs and forgetting to do things. So that story really gave me a lot of heart to kind of understand that if at the top of my game, I'm still going to mess up from time to time. It's going to be perfectly okay. And I may always feel like a little bit of an imposter, but so does everybody else, and that's fine. And we'll help you work through that. So that's my little speech on imposter syndrome.
Thank you, Mark. I want to just put a plug in for putting some questions in the chat. Tracy, I know you put a question in that we'll get to in a few minutes. If others have questions, now that you know the panelists a little bit, make sure to post them in there, and we'll try to get some of those answered before the end of our time. Okay, moving on to another topic. The job search. This is, people wonder how they're going to figure out what they're going to do when they're done with this program. So, what can you say to prospective students in terms of how they go about selecting their first role, or how do they even know? Do they have a choice in the matter? Will they have a preference? What can we say to students on this? Or if somebody wants to talk about their experience in the job search and how they selected their role. I'm thinking about you, Jared, for this.
Yeah, I can talk about it. I think I was unique in that I got my first role 2 months after job search started, which was pretty quick. It was also right before COVID started. So if like a week later, I probably wouldn't have gotten a role for like 8 months or something. Anyways, so choosing the role, I just applied to everything. So I don't know if there's much choice, except in that if you get multiple job offers, then you get to choose. But also, like, as a junior engineer, like, you have everything to learn. So no matter what you do, you're going to learn stuff. So I wasn't picky about roles. Obviously, I applied to what I learned in the program. So I was applying to like lots of JavaScript, front end, React jobs. Anything that mentioned Ruby, I don't know if Ruby's still the main language, but anything that used Ruby I was applying to. I was even applying to things that mentioned like Java or C++, even though I hadn't studied those in years, just because like I was confident that I had the foundation that like if I'd gone an interview in C++, I could have crammed in the basics of it and learned it. So that was like choosing roles, right? I think what really helped me was like, and like the instructor was going to tell this, your career tips, it was networking. Networking is why I got my job so quickly. I posted in, oh, this is for everyone. There's a Slack channel called Out in Tech. It's for queer people in tech. They have channels for every city and jobs in every city. And so I posted in the time SF jobs. Someone had posted, hey, Typeforms hiring. That was my first company. I messaged him. I was like, hey, would you guys take a junior? And he's like, sure. And I applied. And then this is the other key. I was very persistent. I applied and I didn't hear anything back. And so I followed up with the guy and I was like, hey, what happened? He's like, I don't know. And then he came back to me. He's like, can you try again? I was like, sure. Another week passed. I was like, hey, what happened? He was like, we're not getting it. Here, can you just email our head of talent? And so I emailed the head of talent. I don't think I would have gotten an interview if like the application had gone through, but because it was persistent, I got the interview. They really liked me. I got a technical challenge. So right after job search, you're going to start studying full-time like data structures and algorithms, which is what a lot of entry-level jobs will test you on. I had just started that, and so I got lucky in that the ones that were on the thing were ones I had already studied. So that went well. The in-person happened, and that was like, it was live with React, and I had to build like a version of theirs. And so like that was a lot easier than data structure and algorithms. I was like, I can build a website with React. I had just done a whole full website clone. And so that went really well, and then I got the job. But yeah, so that's my point. Networking's great. Follow up and be persistent. I can't tell you how many people have like reached out to me for jobs, and like I put in an application for them, and like I just never heard from them again. And like if they had like kept pushing, like maybe talent would have then like reached out to them, given them a phone call, something like that. So yep, those are my two things: be persistent and network, and apply to everything.
Yura?
So again, I think my situation might be a little bit unique. So I actually got my job offer kind of serendipitously. So prior to doing App Academy, I do a lot of work in the online knitting community, which may seem a little, random, but I was working on studying like online knitting communities while I was doing my PhD anyway. So I was already active in that space. And for my final capstone project, I created this website where people can go and like post scraps for like yarns and things like that, and then swap them with different people who want specific types of like scrap yarns, who aren't looking to like buy or sell specifically. And so I posted about that project on my Instagram, and someone actually saw it and offered a position based on a startup that they were doing, kind of like in the online crafting space. And so it was kind of like a perfectly random set of circumstances that led to me getting the job offer. I still have to wait to start the job because I need my work authorization because I'm not a United States citizen. And USCIS is taking their sweet time with my permanent residency application. So it's been a while of waiting, but yeah, so that was kind of a random way of getting a job. But in the meantime, I've been like doing other job interviews. Networking is really key. I think you mentioned talking to other people in my cohort who have found really great places that they're working at, talking to recruiters that they've talked to. I had a couple of really great interviews that way where they sent me home with like take-home assignments that were more what I want. So I hate data structures and algorithms, which is kind of not a great thing to say, but I prefer like making things and like seeing them happen as opposed to just sort of like amorphous data structures, which I know is like super important. But I had a couple of really good interviews through talking to people and talking to recruiters who have talked to people I know, where they were basically like, here's a take-home project, make this website, make it do a thing. And so those are really fun. But yeah, networking, a little bit of luck, a lot of discipline, I think goes a long way in getting that job. And thank you, Danny. Desire comment.
Were you at UC San Diego?
No, I was at Indiana University.
Okay, crazy. So there was a separate person who was a grad student at that school that worked with online knitting communities. That's funny.
Probably I might know them. It's entirely possible we talk to each other.
Okay, well, we'll talk later.
Okay.
Folks that work at App Academy, is that a thing? Can we work at App Academy when we're done? How does that work? How did that happen?
Oh, Whit, you're doing the dive. I mean, you should. I feel like you should talk about getting.
Yeah,
your
I
role at
guess.
Academy.
I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Yes, that is a thing that can be done. I went through about the first week of a sprint after I graduated, and Mark was actually my coach, I guess still is. And we met and he was like, oh, I had already interviewed and gotten in. Sure. And it was like, well, we don't really need to meet right now because I'm going to start this job. What is very nice about this, about going like straight into actually just being a TA here, is that I can keep honing my skills, and I am currently working on my projects that I have created before. Like I'm expanding. I just like added 2 new features to my capstone, which has been a really cool adventure into like algorithms and researching what I would want for my specific app kind of thing. Because I did a flashcard creation in studying app, and I actually did the study feature finally, instead of it just being like, yeah, you can make flashcards. But that was like, I think right now that's been a really, really cool thing to keep diving into. And also the thing about teaching is that I really think it is the best way to keep learning, because I'm just getting a deeper and deeper understanding of what I am trying to help others with. I think even though I just graduated, it's something that is, I lost my words there. It's good. And I get a lot out of it, and also the connections that I've made in this company. I mean, I started working here because I really do believe in the people that work here. They're very welcoming, and I was kind of shocked about how much the staff really cares and is inclusive, and made sure that I knew that they had my back, and that, I mean, obviously they knew about my pronouns, and they were all so respectful of that. And really, I know a lot of them like probably don't understand, just like the other cohort mates as well, but they were willing to go the extra mile to make sure that I was okay and that I was good, and had a lot of resources for me as well, for things like other disabilities that I have. And that can be something that's especially hard for people that are already marginalized. So I think this has been a really good company for me to stay with, just for that, for moral support, and that I feel like these are good people and I don't feel scummy about where I work. So that's like refreshing, because I've never been able to have that. I feel good about the work that I'm doing, and I know when I move on for here, connection I've made will keep me going to really great things, and I'm glad to have these connections that I'll keep.
Thank you for sharing, Whit. So I'm gonna do a couple questions out of the chat. So given the pandemic, and we get this one a lot in admissions, so do you have any metrics for what percentage of grads get placed in remote or hybrid remote in-person jobs? So I do think COVID has kind of changed options for beginner software engineers. So if somebody in that realm could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I don't have specific numbers. I would say that at this point, it's been the vast majority though. So if you want a remote job, you can find one. It used to be where a fully remote job was a little bit more elusive, but they did exist. You just have to work a little harder to get that job. Nowadays, it's actually far easier to find a remote job. If that is what you want, a lot of companies are offering hybrid or optional, either fully remote or in person. That's why I don't have the clear data. It's simply because if you took a role that gave you both options, you could choose to stay at home or work in the office. It kind of depends. Some companies are asking that you relocate regardless. That way you're close to the office if ever there is a reason why they would want people to come in. That makes some sense, right? Like Silicon Valley exists because it is a geographic area that is small and easy for people to commute to each other and to meet in person, even if you're not going into the office every single day, right? So that's kind of the idea. But certainly they exist. And lots of people, almost everybody is getting them right now.
Thank you.
And I just want to tag on to that, just kind of going back to the talking about in the job search and kind of what you're looking for, finding your job. Something that I would encourage you to start thinking of now are what are those kind of values and what are you looking for in the next opportunity? If remote is something that you transitioned into this space to attain, and that's part of what you were looking for in making this transition, finding these new opportunities, start to kind of gather those things. We call it like kind of targeting your companies, targeting your goals in terms of what are you looking for in those values. It can be kind of location-based, maybe remote, but even other things regarding like company culture. I had a job seeker recently ask if I could help to nail down companies that provide pet insurance as part of their benefits package. There are really lots of different ways you can target your first and or next role. But yes, just on that, remote, it's possible, it's attainable. And honestly, kind of ever since people are starting to transition back into the office, there's been a lot of pushback too in the space of like companies that are taking those stances of like, we are going to become a fully remote workplace. I'm excited to see more people go that route. But I think there's a movement coming, so get excited.
Thank you. Okay, another question. Can you fail the program if you're having problems understanding the course? How much assistance do you get to prevent you from reaching that point? So I think this is kind of an instructional, like, what are we doing? What is happening in the class to make sure that you are going to be successful on these assessments, which I know is what we're all worried about.
I can take that if you'd like. So there's tons of support. I know, again, Whit can probably also elaborate on this, but there are tons of instructors. There's lots of instructor support. Instructors are there for you to guide you, to help you every step of the way. And it is our goal to get you all to the finish line, right? That is something that we want. That being said, depending on the program that you choose, there are different kind of guardrails in place. For the online program, we have a deferral system. If you fail an assessment, you repeat a module, and we have 7 of these modules. Deferring into a past module gives you the opportunity to kind of review the material, go back through the material, and learn more. Learn more about the thing that maybe you slipped up on, or just you weren't clear about. So that's very helpful. Another thing, though, if you're in the on-campus programs, we do not have that similar deferral system. However, you can have academic deferrals if requested based on things that may come up in life. But at the end of the day, remember, though, it's very important to remember that this is a school, and we want to make sure that when you graduate, we're not just graduating every single person who applied to App Academy, because that would be unfair to you. We want to graduate people who are ready to take the role, who are ready to become software engineers. I mean, still there's work in the job search to do, to study, to get prepared. But we want people to recognize that, again, this is a huge life change. And so we do make sure that you have all the support, all of the care and attention that you need. But we do have to have some way of kind of making sure that the individuals who do graduate that this is the right thing for you, right? We want to make sure that that's always going to be true. Allie?
Gotta unmute. I wanted to add to that, kind of what Mark said at the very beginning, though, and you're doing it now even by asking this question, but advocate for yourself. It's really, really important to reach out when you need those resources, when you need that help. Unfortunately, especially when there's maybe one instructional assistant and maybe 10 people that they're trying to help at the same time, be the squeaky wheel, ask for help, ask for assistance, ask for the things that you need. Because otherwise we don't want anybody kind of slipped into the cracks or losing those opportunities to get that help, but the help is available.
Okay, I want to be mindful of time, and we are at time. Daniel, you did have a question out there for Yura. I don't know if Yura has like a really short answer for you, just about meeting people. And then I think that'll be the last question. We got them all.
I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through chat. What was the question?
So how is it meeting new people and going through kind of a whole experience with a bunch of strangers, especially given that you were online? Like you mentioned Discord. I know that was one kind of community space. Is there any other kind of spaces, or did they do anything in class to kind of help you all get to know each other?
I think it really is a matter of getting yourself out there. App Academy can only do so much for you. They can provide you the spaces to communicate, but you really have to put yourself out there first. There were a couple of things that App Academy also did. They will send out a little Google Doc of all these different groups that you can join. So I joined the one that was for the Asian/Asian American support group. That was really helpful. I also joined the LGBTQ plus group. That was also really nice. We had some cool lunches and chatted in that. I think Whitney kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but there's also a lot of stuff where, you get put into these pair programming exercises and sometimes you click and then, you can take that conversation out of pair programming. You can, approach them on Discord and arrange to hang out or study together on the weekends. And that was really helpful for me as well. But yeah, it really is a matter of getting yourself out there. I have found that the vast majority of people that I've talked to are super welcoming. They're very friendly. We all kind of support each other because we all know how stressful and intensive this can be. So yeah, I don't know where else to go from there, honestly.
No, thank you. You get the last word. So I just want to thank our panelists, Allie, Jared, Mark, Whit, Yura. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with all of us today. And Heather, thanks for organizing this as well. And it was, I hope I get to cross paths with many of you that were here in the near future. Have a really great evening.
Bye, everyone.
Nice to meet you all. Bye.
Thank you.